My friends, the great experiment.
Prodigy.
Prodigy. Hidden. Trick.
Would you look at that?
The greatest trick.
And you people, you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
The greatest trick.
Welcome to Greatest Trek. It's a new Star Trek podcast from the makers of The Greatest Generation. I'm Adam Pranica.
I'm Ben Harrison. And we have a guest today, Adam.
Yeah, the third. Do you think our guest rides in the front if we're in the pod car?
Oh yeah, I'm probably in the trunk at this point.
Yeah.
We all know Adam always drives.
I have to drive. It's a compulsion. That means you're fiddling with the stereo, Aaron Waltke.
Hello!
The rare return guests. Welcome back.
Live Logs and Proper. Glad to see you all.
Are you the most frequent guest on this show? I think you are by now.
I think I am officially part of the show now.
Yeah.
I'm a featured regular.
You are a co-host.
I wasn't aware that you could be our emergency contact were there to be a sick call or some other scheduling thing. Like, can we call on you to just tag us in?
Yeah, absolutely. I may not pick up, as has been evident on your podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great job by you.
I can't believe you picked up. I mean, we did star 67, so the number was blocked, and that's the only way we got through to you. But glad you're here.
Yes. Somehow it just sent like an Amber Alert to my phone, and I felt like I had to pick up.
Yeah. We've got friends at City Hall.
It said scam likely underneath it.
Right.
Aaron Waltke, head writer of Star Trek Prodigy, a show that we just wrapped up on Greatest Trek, and really enjoyed the experience. You have wrapped this up long ago, though. Like your feelings about how much time has passed since it ended, far different from ours. How are you feeling?
Yes. I mean, not unlike a starship going through an Ouroboros of time loops, I myself am constantly re-experiencing the joy of this show through other people like yourselves who are experiencing it for the first time. So, you know, I'm very proud of the show we made so far, and I'm glad that people have enjoyed it as much as they have. And, you know, I feel very secure in our place in the Star Trek pantheon. I'm just...
you said so far.
I
Aaron,
did.
what does
yeah.
that mean?
Well, hope springs eternal, right? Like in this particular day and age of television and film, money isn't exactly raining down from the heavens, but I think if any show or franchise has shown a certain cockroach-like longevity, it has been Star Trek. So
it's true.
I have a suspicion that you know, someday, sooner or later, maybe an opportunity will avail itself that we can continue these stories in some capacity.
That would be really terrific.
What happens with you at like where you are credits-wise on this show? Were they to plug the jumper cables in to the concept and turn the engine over? Like, are you attached and obligated in such a way where you would, of course, be involved? Or can this be just like taken from you and given to other folks?
Well, can something be taken that was never truly yours? I think Star Trek, most people that I've spoken to and had the privilege of calling now my colleagues on all those different Star Trek shows firmly believe that Star Trek, you are just a temporary steward. Right? You honor and respect the highs and lows, you know, whether it's your thresholds or your inner lights. It's yours to just briefly hold like a candle and then pass on and light someone else, whether that's a viewer at home or maybe I'll inspire whatever fourth wave Star Trek fan who's going to be writing Star Trek 30 years from now is going to say, oh my God, that classic Prodigy episode.
Yeah, I grew up on Prodigy and then, yeah.
What's crazy though is the show has been out long enough now that I have actually heard from a number of kids that are now not kids anymore that said that was my gateway Star Trek. And
wow,
isn't that wild that it's now?
They still want you to buy them beer though when you meet them outside.
Right,
of the convenience
I'm
store.
1 year out from my driver's license reading the right number. No, but you know, are they legally required to bring me back? Of course not. I don't think they're legally required to do that for anybody. But you know, if they were to ask me back to Star Trek in any capacity, of course, I would do whatever was in my power to be a part of it, because, it's like a bad penny. I just can't, it's embedded in my soul. I need it.
Well, it's very encouraging to hear that it's not well and truly dead. I guess, like no official notice of cancellation means you can always kind of keep a flame lit for Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah, and
which is great.
I don't think it's unreasonable either.
Yeah, especially with season 2. I mean, like, and the fact that it went and found a home at Netflix, and like, from what we can tell here in the cheap seats, it seems like a lot of people watched it on Netflix, and hopefully now that it's getting the greatest Trek bump, somebody is watching those download numbers at Netflix.
Yeah.
Going, hey, maybe there's something to this thing.
You know what it feels like, in the NBA, where somebody like gets a basketball really close to the hoop, and then one dude with extreme reach just barely is able to like tip it into the hoop. I feel like that's what the Friends of DeSoto are doing for us right now.
That would be tremendous. Well, you've got some exciting announcements since then. You've got a new show coming up that you're show running without the Hagemans, right? No Hageman involvement on the Wings of Fire project that you're doing for Amazon?
That's correct. It's just me, and I've been working with Tui Sutherland.
God, finally, like a lead weight off of your balloon, right?
What's it time to go solo after a long-time collaboration comes to an end?
I don't know. Which of the solo albums that Paul McCartney or John Lennon wrote eclipsed the Beatles and made them stop asking about the Beatles?
Oh yeah, this is your RAM, isn't it?
Yes. When the Hagemans texted me about it, I joked like, I tried to slip into the Variety announcement that I was standing on the shoulders of Hagemans, because I do think that, insofar as writing action adventure television, especially in animated or science fiction or fantasy, I certainly, have my own talents, but I do think I learned a lot from them. And, I've been collaborating. They were my first TV show I ever worked on, was their TV show, or a TV show they were the head writers on, called Troll Hunters. So we've been, in each other's sort of orbit for well over a decade now. So we're all friends and collaborators, and we've done stuff apart. We've done stuff together, and we just kind of celebrate each other's experiences and successes.
It doesn't sound catty.
No, it's not. It actually isn't.
That's great.
That's one of the nice things about working in animation, I think, is animated people tend to, maybe because there's just like one extra layer of anonymity to a certain degree. There's a little bit less of a need to hog the spotlight. Like, people are just there to make good stuff and be nice to each other. And I can't say that for all of live action television and film. So that's been nice.
I wonder how differently, this moment hits for you, because, you're entertaining job offers and you're becoming a showrunner of something else. Your professional life was very different at the end of season 1 of Star Trek Prodigy. The limbo of that versus, I don't know, the resolution of what's happening to you now has to feel quite different and probably a lot better, huh?
I suppose, I think that the wild ride that Prodigy went on is not something that anybody was anticipating, but I'm certainly glad that the fandom rallied around it the way they have. And I guess to speak to your broader question, yeah, it feels great to be employed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's no guarantee right now. And it hasn't been for a while, for sure.
The greatest danger facing us is an irrational fear of the unknown. Huge unknown.
On my mark, go fast.
What are some threads from Prodigy that you would love to pick up and run with in a season 3 that, may or may not happen?
Well,
if you can say,
here's the tricky thing about that particular question. It is like, if I tell you, then, I'll have to come up with something else when I actually, if and when, get to make more seasons.
Do you have that season broken and in bullet points and like ready? What's the status of that in your mind?
Okay, so I don't have it broken fully, but the Hagemans and I obviously were talking about it, of like where the show could go from here. And that's, I think, kind of the beauty of the ending of season 2 is like it is a closing of a chapter, but it is far from the end of the book. And if anything, we kind of just opened the aperture and finally almost surreptitiously moved all the chess pieces in place that we can just make a straight up nuts and bolts, peas and carrots Star Trek show. And what I mean by that is we can go anywhere. We can do Adventures of the Week. We could do DS9 arcs. It's a clean slate. They're all actual Starfleet officers now. Spoilers if you're listening to this like a psychopath without having seen the show.
Yeah. This will be titled something like Prodigy Season 2 Wrap Up. So
yeah, right.
I think we'll put your name in the title so that the folks who are just into you and stuff that you do will want to seek it out.
Yeah. The way that the show, the season ends, it's a broad new horizon in more ways than one. You have their official Starfleet officers, and now they're venturing into the unknown, far away from the few knowns that we have in the Star Trek universe, because if anything, the Star Trek universe has taught us that the galaxy is a very big place.
Yeah.
You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is, and so on.
While Voyager is, venturing off into the Delta Quadrant, you could have the Dominion War happening, and they had no idea.
What your theory presupposes is that it's not mostly Borgs out there?
Right. Believe it or not.
Amazing.
Not just Borgs and Cardassians and Romulans. Yeah, and I think that just in the greater Star Trek timeline, 2385 onward, up through, let's say, 2390-ish, when the main events of Picard start picking up in earnest, it's a pretty wide open field. Like, I think at most we have, a couple of things that we hear about in flashback in Picard season 1, specifically dealing just with like Riker's family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the nature of the synths and that sort of thing. And then you have the cold open of the Star Trek movie, which shows like old Spock kidnapping red matter and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it for like almost a half a decade to a decade, depending on how in the weeds you are with the timeline. And it's wide open. And think about how much happened in 10 years in any of the other shows. Like all those shows took place over 3 to 5 years for the most part.
Right.
It was exhilarating seeing how you connected this boxcar up to Picard, especially.
Yeah.
The way you chose to do that. I thought that was really well done. It made me wonder, like, what possibilities were available to you? What possibilities did you ask for and then were told, like, no, we've actually have plans for this part of the timeline. This is what isn't already called. You could have dibs on this. Like, how does it actually work from a creative perspective?
Well, from a creative perspective, we had Deandra Pendleton Thompson in our writer's room, who was the writer's assistant on Star Trek Picard season 1. So even as we were, I think they're in the process of finishing rewrites on Star Trek Picard season 1 when we were writing the first season of Star Trek Prodigy. So because of that, we knew from the get-go very intimately what was coming down the pipe, so to speak, in terms of the Star Trek timeline. Mm-hmm. And I think whether you want to call it sort of boldness or hubris and arrogance, foolhardiness, rather than just sort of wave our hand and just say like, we'll never get there. We're not going to deal with that. That's not what our show's about. If you say, because we knew setting our show in 2385, there would constantly be this sort of sword of Damocles hovering over our show of like, well, we know what happens in 2385. And so rather than avoiding that or just being ambiguous or being mealy-mouthed or using weasel words or whatever to get around it, we were like, we embraced that challenge and said, well, how would that affect, Starfleet and specifically the story of our young crew, who worked so hard to finally get into the heart of this utopian society only for that utopia to be threatened. And that doesn't sound like bad storytelling, like meat to me. That sounds fascinating and like exciting and something that'll take you to some very deep places, because ultimately what we landed on, you see a glimmer of it in the show, is like, that utopia is not necessarily something that is, you've reached it and it's over. Star Trek has shown us repeatedly that it's a protopia. It is a utopia in the making. And it is only made by the people who carry that torch within their hearts, no matter how difficult it is.
Pre-utopia can still get you pretty hopeful.
Yes.
Freedom isn't free is the pull quote from this section of the interview.
Yes, the tree of the Federation is watered with the blood of liberty.
Yeah, blood of Borgs specifically.
Blood of Borgs. Do they have blood? I just assumed it was like a nanite ooze.
Yeah, it might just be gray goo.
Yeah, it might be gray goo.
Fertilized by Chaos Murf droplets. Can you confirm how much of Chaos Murf could be lost while still preserving the essence of a Chaos Murf? How much volume?
We did talk about that at length and just never really had the narrative real estate to explore it. But we did talk about maybe like a planarian. At some point, maybe he would get cut in half and then you just have two Murfs.
Yeah. I would love to see the like alien autopsy episode in season 3.
Right. Like
we had like a question of like if like a sliding door shut and the little thing floating above Murf's head was on one side and Murf was on the other side.
Yeah.
Like how far could he keep walking before that starts hurting, or does another one spontaneously appear?
Well, I can tell you that I do have my own headcanon, which I guess is quasi-canon, which I can, as a exclusive to your show, I will reveal the nature of the weird floaty blobby thing.
This is what we brought you in here
for.
That little blobby thing is suspended via seemingly invisible microfilaments, just as dilithium crystals extend into subspace and out of our plane of existence. So those microfilaments do as well. So they are essentially suspended by like a microfilament subspatial hair follicle situation.
A microfilament mousse, if you will. Style it upward.
It all tracks.
If in a Delphic Expanse subspace anomaly context, Murf got hit with a ripple, you could see that thing go flying.
Yeah, I think that would actually cause him to explode.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be the one thing that could kill Murf.
Right. It's like when you combine certain D&D items, like if you put like an immovable rod inside of a bag of holding inside a bag of holding, it'll explode. It's like that.
I got to remember that for my next session.
We spent a lot of minutes talking about Chaos Murf and what his deal is. Aaron, what is his deal? What does he want? What does he want besides chaos?
I will tell you the same thing that I told Trek Movie whenever they had a specific question about Murf, which is do not impose your anthropocentric assumptions onto melanoid slime worms. They are what they are. If something seems unusual, it's simply because they're operating on a different plane than you are.
Just on a different level that you don't even understand, man. Cool. That would be the reason.
Nothing pisses Adam off more.
Would you look at that?
I was really delighted at like a lot of the Star Trek trivia that you illuminated over the course of a couple of seasons, stuff like cetacean ops. It was so neat to see things like how the whales worked. And I wonder, like, is there a part of the Trek lore that you were able to shine a light on that you were particularly proud of in articulating on this show? And maybe what else is out there that you're like, God, if this was on the launch pad, like this would have really cut some people's heads off if I was just able to tell this part of the Trek story.
Well, I mean, that was the big one. Like, still to this day, my most popular tweet I ever tweeted, it got, literally thousands of likes. Literally thousands. It was before the show had even come out. I had posted a thread about cetacean ops and how, secretly there were dolphins aboard, the Enterprise D, and there were a bunch of clues hidden throughout, even Geordi talking about it on that one Ferengi episode.
Have you had a chance to see the dolphins yet? This is
anyone who had that poster on their wall the way we did. Like, we know cetacean ops is a thing. What happens in there?
Yeah, it was in the technical manual. There's the Terciops crew sticker on the wall. And so I was like, that is my favorite bit of like hidden lore. Now everybody and their mother knows about it because Mike McMahon and our show basically forced it into the common parlance.
Your whales are less horny than those whales, though.
That's fair.
Maybe because it's a kid's show, you just didn't want to show that side of them. And that's fine, too.
I mean, it's whatever your imagination wants it to be.
I mean, I took a look at Jillian. She can get it. Especially the mirror universe version with the with a huge eye scar.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people were asking how did that play out of like, how did the evil whales being sort of sentient creatures in the mirror universe, how did they play out, especially with like the parallel events of Star Trek 4 and whatnot. And in my mind, the evil whales of Earth just built a weapon and shot that thing down.
Oh man, that probe traveled so far to get shot out of the sky.
Yeah.
What's that stuff they make perfume out of? The whale stuff?
Ambergris.
Is that like the true like apex ambergris is the weaponization
Yes.
of it? It's like turning it into nuclear material.
Yeah. And then the evil whale empire and the Terran empire formed a delicate détente and chose to work together for their own interests.
Yeah, because the Terran Empire, like, not a organization well known for playing nice with other species, necessarily. But I guess maybe they, like the Xindi, they make an exception for species that arose on their own homeworld.
Yeah, or it seems like they're okay with some. Like the fact that Vulcans are still part of the Terran Empire is an interesting conundrum.
That's true, yeah.
They're not as delicious as Kelpians, clearly.
No.
Right.
No, maybe I think the whales, maybe the evil whales of the Terran universe, maybe are the first ones to say, "Have you tried eating them?" As far as like other ideas that I still want to make it in the show, I did find this. This is my season 3 ideas list. That you can see.
Oh man!
Just keeps going.
Oh shit!
Aaron has scrolled 6 times. There's pages and pages of these ideas.
We're gonna tile that out so that nobody goes through that with a fine-tooth comb, but we will go through it with a fine-tooth comb ourselves. Just like turning the image on its side in Photoshop and like enhance.
Yeah.
Enhance.
No, just buy me a tequila and soda at the next con, and maybe I'll let you take a peek.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Do you have being that Prodigy is not like in active production, isn't like getting a new release promoted anytime soon? Are you going to stay on the Star Trek convention circuit as you have been, or are you too busy with other things?
I mean, yes to both. Like, I would love to keep doing it, but at this particular moment in time space, I am quite busy, and it's a little hard for me to navigate the challenges of travel and stuff while also juggling a 2-year-old and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, my wife has like her high school reunion coming up. Like, it's just like a perfect storm of like making this summer really complicated. But I would.
She doesn't need to go to that.
Look, that's a conversation that has been had, and I was properly vetoed. But I would love to keep doing it as long as they keep inviting me, and if I can, I would love to come do it. And I do think that at this year's STLV, for instance, there is going to be a Prodigy presence. I think maybe Jen Murrow, who is a writer on season 2, is going to be on the big Star Trek panel. So we'll have a presence there for sure.
I actually just had a conversation with Jen's husband, who was the Max Fun Listener of the Month.
Wow.
Or maybe is about to be or something as of this release.
And that just randomly came up. That was like, oh yeah, my Jen was a writer on Star Trek.
Randomly on the call. And Will Wheaton mentioned her to us as well, because it sounds like she had a lot to do with him coming on to season 2 and like the design of the character and stuff. And
yes.
So yeah, it was like a funny little like confluence of name checks.
Yeah. Interestingly, he also, I believe, co-created the DC Universe character Primer, which it's like a young adult superhero in the DC Comics universe. So that was cool. You talked to him.
Oh, fun.
Ben, nice segue into the Will Wheatonness of this season of Prodigy. I mean, here's a guy that has had sometimes a strained relationship with Star Trek and the folks involved in it. Got to imagine, like, that very first phone call or that very first meeting could have gone in all kinds of different ways. Like, how did you prepare yourself for the idea of maybe working with him, maybe not, making the case that you're friendly Star Trek, you're not you're not out to destroy the character of Wesley Crusher. We're going to use him in a really fun and interesting way. Like, how does that go?
Well, thankfully, Will already had kind of started to work his way back into the Star Trek world. I think even though I don't think it's controversial to say that his character had mixed reactions from the Star Trek community when he first came out. Myself and Jen and a lot of other people on the Prodigy crew, we were that perfect age. We were the people that Roddenberry wrote the character of Wesley Crusher for. So growing up watching TNG as like my gateway Star Trek, I was like so jazzed that there was a kid my age or maybe a little bit older that was there on the starship and had a presence and wasn't just like, baggage for some scientist's kid. Like he found his way to being useful and being a part of the stories. And this is going to sound very highfalutin, but it's like in a way, it was like, oh, there's a place in the future for me too. It's not just adults in their sort of pajamas, giving very serious orders. Like there's a place for everybody, including young people, to actualize and become their best selves.
Mm-hmm. Or in the case of Alexander, to make a really shitty clay cup.
Yes.
That kids of all different aptitudes can find a place in the future.
Right.
We need to score a lot of Latin fast.
Licensed businessman.
This ship and her history will shortly become the care of another crew. They will continue the voyage as we have begun.
The greatest trek.
Will told us about the work that he had done with a writer about like constructing the backstory of him at this moment in time. It sounds like a ton of energy came from him and some energy came from you. Like, was this more about Will Wheaton's enthusiasm for the character and returning him to Star Trek than it was about your own desire to capture him for your show? And was it just like a good fit?
I think we started, we wouldn't have done it if it didn't make sense. Really, it was this kind of perfect 1,000 points of light coming together kind of situation where we knew season 2 was going to deal directly with all the timey-wimey stuff that we had kind of been pushing off with the broom from season 1 of having to deal with. Specifically the time paradox and Chakotay stuck in an alternate future timeline and, them trying to set things right, but then causing further complications. And we knew we were going to get super timey-wimey in this season. And we also knew that we had set a maxim for ourselves from the beginning of Prodigy that while it makes sense to kind of focus on Voyager, given the presence of Janeway's outsized role in the show and her holographic and admiral selves, it made sense to start with Voyager, but we didn't want it to be exclusively a Voyager sequel. We wanted to be a sequel to all of Star Trek and a gateway to all of Star Trek. So that kind of opened the question of okay, if we did start bringing in a legacy character of some sort, we would need somebody who ideally was from another show that could essentially be a guide across all of time and space and dimensions and perhaps have some affinity or story to tell with young people in Starfleet. And as we were saying that out loud, I think Jen said it and I was saying it at the same time almost. We were like, Wesley Crusher!
Yeah.
And then we sold the Hakemans on it because we were as a TNG head, the way Wesley Crusher kind of left the Star Trek universe was just this massive dangling question mark of, from season 1, in a time when it was mostly episodic, they had this tiny serialized runner of Wesley and the Traveler. And from the beginning, that's episode 2 or whatever, they're Wesley is destined for great things. He is the Mozart of interdimensional travel. He's going to evolve far beyond your human understanding. He has a great destiny awaiting him. And then at the end, that effectively that portal opens up, time freezes, the Traveler shows up and it was yep, you're right. Now's the time for you to come fulfill that destiny. And he steps through the portal and then ... question mark. And as a kid, I was
I think it's the second biggest dangling thread from TNG, the first being the nubbin bugs. What happened with them? That message that went out to the galaxy to call more nubbin bugs. We're never going to follow up on this as Trek. Prodigy crew like ever gonna encounter them? Like, what are we thinking about the nubbin bugs at this point?
Well, like I said, I have a lot of stuff in my season 3, and
okay, good. And we can go anywhere because we set it up to just be a meat and potato Star Trek show.
Right, exactly. But I think for me, that was like this great unfinished, like what it's like the end of, I don't know if this is going to date me. It's like whenever a favorite show of yours gets canceled and they don't know they're getting canceled. And so you end on some tiny little cliffhanger. And then if they're lucky, they'll get to kind of do a ham-fisted, like put a little card up and said, and Sam Beckett never went home, I guess. Or Duckman was another great example. I don't know if you're, that's a pull.
I remember loving that show.
But Duckman ended, a lot of people forget it ended on a cliffhanger where like his wife we thought was dead, like shows up and is like, I can explain everything. And then it says to be continued and then never was continued.
I haven't thought about Duckman in forever.
Never heard of Duckman.
You've never heard of Duckman?
Never heard of it.
It's so good.
Didn't Duckman have a really great theme song and opening?
Yes.
God, I remember it so fondly.
Yeah, and I think, unless I'm mistaken, I think this theme song was written by Dweezil Zappa, who also voiced one of the characters.
That checks out.
Yeah.
Now, was this a man-sized duck or 100 duck-sized men in this show?
It was a like adult animated sitcom like Family Guy or something, but there was a duck detective named Duckman who was voiced by Jason Alexander, basically doing George Costanza.
Wow. Fun.
And it was way too good for what it was. It was really funny.
Little pieces of bread by a park bench don't mean eat little pieces of bread. Little pieces of bread by a park bench equals sex.
Yeah.
See, that's something that George Costanza's Duckman could say.
Did you ever make the mistake of saying George Costanza when you were in the presence of Jason Alexander during a recording session?
Great question.
You know, we didn't, but I remember when we first brought him in, we recorded him because we were like, we need him to be a foil to Jank and Pog. And, you know, like he needs to out-Tellerite our resident Tellerite. And he started doing George Costanza, and we were like, whoa, hold on. You don't have to do George if you don't want to. It's like, oh, really? And people always just want me to do George. And we were like, no, invent a character. And he did, and it was great. And, you know, obviously Jason is no stranger to Star Trek. He was on an episode of Voyager's Think Tank and loves it famously. And so we were so privileged to have him back. So we didn't even really have to explain who the Tellarites were. Like, he knew.
That's awesome.
And he was excited to like invent a character, as I think any actor is, especially who, you know, has a pop culture defining role. It's always nice to expand beyond that.
Yeah, totally. I think he did a great job in that part. Some really fun casting in the adult crew on the Voyager A in this show. And like really distinctive voices too. Like, I mean, David Diggs, like I can hear from a mile away because he's just got such a unique timbre to his voice. But I really felt Jason Alexander like kind of disappeared into that part a little bit.
I know. It's so funny when people are like surprised that was him. And I was like, because he's a great actor. Like, yeah, you know, so it was a delight that we were able to get him for that role. However, at least species-wise typecast he made it his own.
Aaron, you mentioned Chakotay a little bit ago, and I wanted to circle back on a question I know Ben and I were tossing back and forth for a minute, which was like during that finale, there's a moment between Chakotay and Hollow Janeway that is like, Hollow Janeway is confronting the prospect of dying, essentially, like having her memories removed and so forth. But there are some glances between them that I feel like are coded as, and I think we're all adults in the room, we can just say it, I think there might have been a consensual sexual relationship between Chakotay and Hollow Janeway for all those 10 years. You think that happened?
You know, because we didn't show it on camera, what their relationship was on camera one way or the other, I think it's open to all of those fan fiction writers out there to interpret it how they will.
Oh, God, I didn't even think about the fan fiction off of that. Man. You know that's out there.
Were you thinking about the fan fiction a little bit as you were working through those scenes? Like, what could we do to, you know, put some items of interest for the fan fiction community to work off of here.
I think just as we did with the real Admiral Janeway and Chakotay, we felt it would have been disingenuous to just try to pretend like they were still in that mode for the last 2 episodes of Voyager or whatever, where they just were like, you know what, forget it. There was no chemistry. There was never chemistry. It's these two. Which is not. I don't think anybody's super satisfied with the 7 Chakotay situation that happened there. And if you rewatch Voyager like I did, the chemistry between Chakotay and Janeway is so like tangible, like it like to ignore it completely and say that there was no sort of a mutual sort of attraction or whatever you want to call it, I think was a misstep for them to try to back away from that completely. And I think the reason that they did, I think, was a totally valid one insofar as, Kate Mulgrew was concerned that being the first captain to then have a relationship with her first officer, there's an unfair level of pressure put on being the first female captain to be even better than your male counterparts, right?
Right.
But our show was able to step back away from that because they're no longer like serving aboard the same ship.
Yeah.
Which leaves the door open to explore that chemistry and where it might lead. If you ask,
I would say that the fan fiction community has never accepted the idea of a captain not having a relationship with their first officer.
Sure. I understand that's been built in since TOS, but I think that in this case, it was very much there for the better part of 4 or 5 seasons with glimmers of it, even beyond that. And I think, because the show went through so many radical changes, Voyager in particular, we saw, if you have to look at it holistically, and holistically, there was something between them, I think. And I think, like every great sort of will they, won't they relationship, you have moments of missed opportunities, ships passing in the night, but then you have those, just those moments where like maybe they were together, but then it didn't work out, but then maybe there's still something there. We wanted to keep all of that open in a way that, like, my personal headcanon is they probably got together after they went back to Earth. You hear it first from me. I think that's what happened.
Sounds great.
But because life is life, maybe they just needed some space, and so there was this sort of like this
literally because it's Star Trek.
Yes. So there was like a question mark maybe there that our show could start to answer, and if our show continued, then obviously we would continue to explore that. So,
oh man. I hope somebody at Netflix cares enough to find out some of these answers.
The greatest trek
is yet to come.
What you're describing, I feel like, is such a magic trick to Prodigy, because the subtlety of adult relationships conveyed in the way you're describing has so much to do with like the nuance and the posture and the like micro expression of one character looking at another. You get that a lot in Prodigy in a way that I think really represents like how far animation has come as like an art form and as a way to tell these stories. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah. And I think that it was a very narrow needle to thread as well, because I think for as many people that, did have headcanons as far as relationships, there were just as many that are hardline, only if we saw it on the show. And so you have to be, I don't think it's outrageous to say that characters that, are long companions or co-workers or friends for a long time that can develop into something more, whether it's long-term or short-term or on again, off again. Like, I think that's totally valid, but I think it would have been jarring if we just started the new season and all the stuff you want to see of a relationship blossoming was kind of just skipped over. Like, you'd be like, wait, don't we don't get to see any of that? So, I think we always wanted to kind of live in that open space. But if you're being truly honest, you go back and watch Voyager and watch our show. Our show really goes there in a deeper way, I think, in terms of like that longing between them than especially the last few seasons of Voyager did. And we start to peel back the layers even more of that sort of like that what could have been or could be again vibe. And part of that was that sort
of like Kate Mulgrew's prior reticence to explore that in the character on Voyager come up at all when she was working with you guys on Prodigy, or was she more open to it?
We talked to both actors about it, actually, and they actually were both completely open to us like not being quite so rigidly what happened on Voyager's all it is.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think partially because that simple power dynamic of I'm your immediate supervisor wasn't there anymore, then it kind of opened up a lot more possibilities of the nature of the relationship and how to explore it. But also we wanted to acknowledge that however personal or romantic or whatever it is, they still had a very deep relationship that needed to be honored. And that was the main thing, that I think Kate was like, I don't want this to suddenly become like a torrid love affair that ignores everything else they had with each other. It's not just.
If this is a children's show, Aaron Waltke.
She wanted to honor the profoundly deep relationship that they had, regardless of perhaps the romantic aspect or chemistry that they had. She wanted to honor that as well. I'll put it that way.
I'm really curious, like, when in the process those conversations happen, because, like, presumably you're, like, working out what you might want to have happen in a season, and then, like, the idea of Wesley Crusher coming in comes up, and that has to be, like, negotiated, but also, like, the tone of that has to be discussed, or the idea of exploring a little bit more deeply what the relationship between Janeway and Chakotay comes up. And then you have to negotiate that with the performers as well. Like, did you ever get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, we pretty much got the whole season broken, but we got to throw out a lot of it because, an actor agreed to something or an idea came up in discussing a character with an actor that, like, puts a whole new spin on everything?
What's interesting is, and this is not me just saying I'm such a good Star Trek writer, but I think every idea that we threw at them of like, this is what we would like to do, the actors were like, that's correct. That's exactly what they would do. Or that's exactly what we want the future of the character to be. You talk about Will Wheaton, Wesley Crusher, like, you're correct that he had written fan fiction about what his life was like as a traveler. And he was sort of like the Star Trek answer to the Doctor or whatever, as a Whovian as well. And I think that in my headcanon, it was very similar anyway. So when it came time to actually canonizing that and pulling all those threads together, it wasn't like we had to start from whole cloth. That's the fun thing about Star Trek, is that it's been around long enough and there's been enough sort of exegesis, so to speak, of how, well, wait a second, this episode said this and that episode said that. So how does that work? And then you just have like literally decades of fan forum arguments that hash it all out. And so like, there are things that I'm like, I think that's how a nacelle works. Let me look it up. And I Google it and I find a Reddit thread from 5 years ago that confirms exactly what I thought and explains why with cited sources. And I was like, yes, that's why I thought that. And so then it's almost like an afterthought to be like, yeah, that's how it is. But so in this case, like we pitched him what we were thinking with Will Wheaton, and then Will was like, that's what I was thinking too. So
nice.
The fun thing really was like, at one point we gave him the first draft and I was like, if there's any tweaks that you want to do to, I think the one note he said was, and it was almost like even too nerdy for even me to totally, hey nerds, I'm Will Wheaton. He was like the first, he was like, okay, he's channeling the 8th Doctor and I want him to channel like the 12th Doctor more. And I was like, okay. And I remember, and I was like, we let him like take a look at it. I think he added like 2 or 3 lines that were just ideas of jokes, and they made it. We recorded them all and put them in. Like I think one of his jokes that Will had added was like, they're being attracted to us like a subspace beacon, broadcasting on all frequencies. Like that was a Wheatonism, and it was great.
Oh man, tremendous stuff. Aaron Waltke, not to get off of your Star Trek, but we as a show are looking forward to starting our coverage of Strange New Worlds Season 3. And as a Star Trek fan, I wonder if you're a Strange New Worlds fan, are you also excited for Season 3?
Yes, I am. I think that anything that can kind of penetrate the zeitgeist in this day and age and get people to care about Star Trek is a good thing. And I think that Star Trek Strange New Worlds has kind of found that perfect sweet spot of like kind of reinventing the genre a little bit, but also carrying the banner of what came before and pulling in those people that were like, TOS was my only Star Trek crew, but also people that are craving that episodic adventure of the week. And all the people that work on it are truly wonderful people and really smart and super Star Trek fans. So the fact that they get to keep making it is great, because it is an expensive show on a network that doesn't have a lot of money.
Yeah. Anything you're looking forward to in particular with this season, or are you just kind of waiting to see? Like, do you still have access to anything behind the scenes?
I mean,
in your interregnum between season 2 and maybe season 3 of Prodigy?
I mean, I have my little birdies everywhere. So like, I know a lot of the big cool stuff that happens in season 3, but I'm very excited about them. If you watch the trailer that they released, there's a lot more spoilers in that than maybe you even think there are. and
wow,
it's exciting how they're connecting some dots that I probably would have if they hadn't gotten to it first. I'll put it that way.
Nice.
Well, you've been interviewed a number of times. I think we're the last ones to do it about the end of Prodigy season 2, Aaron. Like, is there anything that you've wanted to say about your experience on the show that no one's given you the right prompt for? Like,
gosh,
what do you wish was out there about your involvement in it or about the show itself that has been missed up until now? Because we want to be the show that gets broadcast.
That scrapes the dregs at the bottom of the barrel of interview questions.
And all those tannins down there.
Right. Those bitter, angry tannins. What I will say is this, like, who knows what the future holds, but I am so profoundly grateful for the fan response to everything that's gone on with the show, good and bad. Star Trek shows in particular tend to be the little starship that could, and all the way from the beginning of mail-in letter writing campaigns and all of that. And the fact that the fandom that I have known and loved for as long as I've been a sentient human being, when our show was encountering some dark and difficult days, that very thing that sustained me as a teenager kind of came back and lifted our ship back up into the sky. Really means a lot to me, more than I think I can really put into words. So I just want to say thank you. Sorry, not to get maudlin and saccharine on your comedy podcast.
Not at all. I mean, we are as grateful that creators like you are involved in making a thing that we love the way that you have. So as sad as it may be that this chapter may be, a part of a book that's set down for a moment, really glad that you were involved at all in making this great thing that we enjoyed. And best of luck to you in all of your future projects. It sounds like you've got a ton coming up, Wings of Fire, and then maybe a book, maybe a second book. Yes. Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, so I'm currently writing a graphic novel right now, actually, that's loosely based on the unfinished works of Stan Lee. It's called The Excelsior's Workforce, and it's a pretty interesting, salient, almost like a satire of the current state of superheroes and the strange sort of capitalism run amok world that we find ourselves living in. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully that'll be coming out next year, maybe. We'll see. And Wings of Fires, it has been announced, and my involvement has been announced. That's going to be on Amazon Prime. That's going to be a little ways out, but feel free to follow me on the social medias, and anytime there's anything I can share,
hell yeah,
I'll keep you updated.
That's awesome. All right, Ben, just a couple more things to take care of, starting with a Priority 1 message. You want to see what we got going in there?
Yeah, let's check it out.
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
Ben, we've got a Priority 1 message here from Sam, and this one's to Carter.
I think I know who these people are.
Here's how that message goes. Congratulations on your engagement. I hope the p-value of your love treatment effect is statistically significant and make your cost per net vow be efficient. I failed the only economics class I took in college. That's a little bit of trivia about me.
Wow.
Actually, I withdrew before I had the chance to fail it.
That's
wasn't
smart.
working out for me.
Yeah. Cut your losses.
Yeah.
This is our buddies Sam and Carter in DC, and from me and Adam, we also would like to congratulate you, Carter, but we don't know what the fuck Sam was talking about with all that p-value stuff.
Yeah, I trust Sam utterly, though, and I believe this to be complimentary in all ways.
Yes, it sounds good and complimentary. And if you'd like to compliment somebody or bewilder me and Adam, we hope you will get a P1 on an upcoming episode. I'm looking at the calendar. Got a lot of Strange New Worlds episodes coming up.
Yeah.
And a lot of available inventory for P1s. So if you'd like to get one locked in for Season 3 Strange New Worlds, now's the time. Jump on it.
Open secret is when Greatest Trek does Strange New Worlds, our audience, I don't know, quintuples? Quadruples?
I mean, I think we should probably defer to Carter and Sam on how to describe what happens to our audience.
Right. Ask them. But you want to get your message in front of these ear holes.
Yeah.
So go to MaximumFun.org/Jumbotron today.
Let's just say the p-value is pretty impressive.
Aaron, before we let you go, we have to ask you this.
We can't not.
You want to sing the Barnus Rex song with us?
Oh,
maybe
my God.
The last time?
I would be honored.
All right. For the entirety of Star Trek Prodigy, did you have yourself a
Barnus Franks.
I'm surprised my dog is here. He didn't wake up for that.
Gosh, did I have a Barnus Franks for the entirety of the series? You know, from day one, you guys kind of had it pegged, but he was always meant to be the Barnus Franks, even before Barnus Franks was a twinkle in, our showrunner's eye. It was, in fact, Murf. Murf is the Barnus Franks of Star Trek Prodigy. He is always on his own wavelength doing his own thing. And that's just because his mind is so complex that he can perceive all of time, space, and reality in one singularity. And if you were to talk to Murf on his level, your mind would probably melt. So instead, he just tries to entertain you and distract you in your poor daily life in linear time. Chaos Murf reigns supreme. Chaos Murf is secretly the great bird of the galaxy. You heard it here. He is, in fact, the creator of the Star Trek universe.
The best possible answer and nomination. Amazing. Thank you so much, Aaron, for being on our show and enshrining Chaos Murf as Apex Barnus Rex.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks a ton, dude.
Live Logs and Proper, Friends of DeSoto for life.
Okay, Adam. Just one last thing. We need a warning, boy. And this is a segment we end every episode of Greatest Trek with when we express our appreciation for someone who has put their entire reputation on the line to recommend our show.
Prepare a buoy and launch it when ready.
Warning, boys.
An emergency buoy. A warning buoy.
This time, it's our old buddy Cam Latif with a message for our assembled audience. Here's how that goes. Shout out to Ben, Adam, and team at Greatest Trek for creating something wonderful that can still make me laugh, smile, and hope as the world around us seems to go up in flames. Both pods are the captain's holiday to my permanent high stress levels. Well, there you go. From Cam's lips to your ears, like the strongest dose possible.
Yeah.
Without a prescription. That's
Indeed.
what Greatest Trek is.
We love us some Cam, and he's always got nice things to say about the show. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate anybody who recommends the show online, especially those who leave a nice review on their podcast thingy, because that helps us to the extent that there are algorithms affecting podcasts, that's the one, I think. So we'd appreciate a little review. Doesn't take a lot of your time, helps us a ton.
Well, that's going to do it for our great conversation with Aaron Waltke. What a dude. What a friend. Best of luck to him. Sounds like we just had a job interview with him, and this is the part where I thank him for his time, but give him the courtesy turn down.
Yeah, Aaron, we're taking the show in another direction.
Yeah.
But we think you're really great.
Really just enjoyed the hell out of talking to you, Aaron, and best of luck in your future endeavors.
Yeah. Honestly, he fucking dodged a bullet, right?
I guess so. One person who didn't dodge anything is our great producer, Wynde, who is here to tell you what's coming up in the coming weeks on Greatest Trek.
Take it away, Wynde.
Greatest Trek is an Uxbridge Shimoda podcast on the Maximum Fun Network. It's hosted by Ben Harrison and Adam Pranica, and it's produced and edited by Wynde Priddy. Coming up next week, it's a big holiday weekend, so we are taking a week off before we come back for a special Greatest Trek Film Fest review covering a movie selected by the winner of our Week 2 giveaway during Max Fun Drive earlier this year. Very exciting. The movie is A Quiet Place Day 1 from 2024, and Ben and Adam are excited to talk about it, so come back for that in 2 weeks on July 11th, right before we kick off coverage of Strange New Worlds Season 3. Thanks so much to all the members who contribute monthly to help keep this show going. Setting up a membership is quick and easy at MaximumFun.org/join, and as always, we really appreciate your support. Thanks to Nick Ditmore, who created the show art, and Adam Ragusia, who composed the theme music. Thanks to Rob Adler and Bill Tilley for all of their work on the @GreatestTrek social media pages. Find those accounts and give them a follow, and be sure to use the hashtag #GreatestTrek when you post about the show. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on Greatest Trek.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported
directly
by you.